Yeah, I'll react to that, sure. Freaking tanks, guys. No, forget tanks. Dan Snow. I don't need another region. Hi. My name is Connor. Hi. I like to learn things. The original link to the video, top of the description. Discord and stuff too. Let's go. Ooh. Guys, why is my lighting frickin'... That's fine, actually. Sorry. Okay.
Tanks. Invented by the British in World War I, they were a source of fascination for the soldiers who fought alongside them. The public were just as mesmerized. These were among the first images people had ever seen of these lumbering metal monsters. And when the Battle of Ancre film was released...
This is why World War I is so fascinating. It's the two enormous things... tanks, airplanes, submarines too. Was World War I the first major use of submarines? If that's true, that's a third thing. Three giant parts of modern military were all machines started in World War I. I know, guys, they could have been prototypes earlier a bit, but I think the first main use, am I right there? That's why World War I is so fascinating, and I'm trying to learn more. I'll stop pausing.
Monsters. And when the Battle of Ancre film was released in early 1917, millions of Britons rushed to see it. And who can blame them? Tanks were like nothing else seen before. But looking back now at those early years of the tank, it's astonishing how rapidly it evolved.
War
on the 30th of June,
will
1915, right here on Wormwood Scrubs in West London, Winston Churchill and David Lloyd George first saw this. An armoured vehicle that could cut through barbed wire. Just 3 months later, it had become this.
This is Little Willie. It's the oldest tank in the world. This one wasn't thought to be long enough to get across the German trenches, and so subsequent models were stretched out.
Little Willie was replaced by Big Willie, also known as Mother. This was the first tank to hit the battlefield, the Mark I. Its first engagement wasn't a resounding success, but it showed its potential.
Question, guys. I wonder. English. Brr, Jesus Christ. I wonder why. They didn't have just like I feel like a giant. Important thing about a tank is that it's a movable shield for your soldiers who are taking machine gun fire, right? And so you ever see like Lord of the Rings where like they're going up Helm's Deep in that the Uruk-hai are in that like all the shields around them, right? And they have the big rammer, right? Like why not have like a mechanized tread version of just all it is the tread, the engine, and then thick enough armor, steel armor or whatever it was on the outside to protect against machine gun fire, and then just have it hollow, like, and so you just have infantry walking with this giant treaded protective thing, you know?
But it showed its potential. But it showed its potential. Independently, the French had come up with their very own tank designs. But they were unreliable and frequently got stuck. The real game changer was this: the Mark IV.
The music makes this feel like a sitcom, and they're introducing all of the characters. Just stop mid-frame.
To the Mark IV tank. I mean, this was the real workhorse of the middle years of the First World War. It bristling with armament. You got the 6-pound gun here. You got this would have been a Lewis gun or a light machine gun here. And then you enter the main body of the tank, quite tight for space. There would have been 8 people in here, 8 crew required, 4 of them just required to drive the thing. Right in the middle, dominating the whole space, is the engine. There we go. It's an old pre-war tractor engine. As you can see, there's no partition here between the engine compartment and the crew compartment, and that meant that people had huge problems. The crews often had to be hospitalised after a day or two in the tank. They'd become asphyxiated.
So when was the first treaded tractor made? I wonder. Like the first treaded motor vehicle.
Often had to be hospitalised after a day or two in the tank. They'd become asphyxiated by the fumes coming off this engine. Also incredibly hot. These exhaust pipes here would have been glowing red hot, and with all the bodies in here as well, it would have been absolutely baking.
Even so, they were held in affection and often named by their crews.
Clamber up here to the commander's seat. First thing I guess about this is that they would have these windows to see through, but of course if they were taking incoming fire, they had to close these, and they had to look through little periscopes, glass periscopes here. More slots, machine gun here, more holes in it to shoot you, put your pistol through and shoot people off the outside of the tank. It was a very, very heavily armoured vehicle, but also one capable of really taking the fight to the enemy as well. They made 1,000 of these during World War I, and it went on to serve with great success in battles like Cambrai.
Right, those are just like used to get over trenches if you think it's a bit too long, right?
The tank was becoming an integral part of the Allied strategy.
Love the music.
As armoured warfare evolved, the number of different types of tank multiplied. This was a so-called Whippet tank. It was designed to follow the heavy tanks into battle. Then when they'd made the penetration, these could spread out, speeding behind the German lines, sowing absolute chaos.
The French had a similar idea, and only a few months earlier, in 1917, had launched the popular Renault FT-17. This was a light tank, and the first with a fully rotating turret.
Doesn't it feel like a sitcom? Sorry.
But it wasn't as quick as the Whippet.
This could do 8 miles an hour, a dizzying speed, around double what other tanks could do at the time.
German.
The Germans were slow to pick up on the whole tank thing. Initially, their high command thought it was pretty unmanly driving around the battlefield in a steel container. Good old walking was good enough. Quite rapidly, though, they realised their mistake, and they produced this, the Sturm Panzerwagen.
I feel like World War One, like you still have a lot of, like, especially the generals being older, where they're not ready. Nobody, it's like they're still in the mindset of like the manly, like pomp and circumstance. I don't even know what that saying is, but like the pageantry of warfare of the, you know, the 1800s is just like humans got so good at killing, their machines got so good at killing that it's like no. Like, I feel like this is the final slap in the face to old style pageantry military officials, where it's like, no, that is all gone. because you're just going to get slaughtered and you're going to lose. Sturmpanzerwagen.
The Germans were slow to produce them though, partly because of the lack of that top-down drive and also the lack of materials thanks to Britain's blockade of Germany. Very few were built and they didn't really go into service until the last days of the war.
British Navy, so OP, overpowered, it's insane.
Very few were built and they didn't really go into service until the last days of the war.
In fact, the Germans probably used more captured British tanks than their own home-produced models. The Germans even set up special workshops where they brought and repaired captured tanks. Meanwhile, the British design just kept evolving.
After the Mark IV tank came, surprise, surprise, the Mark V.
Here's the next character. Is it just me or the World War I Mark tanks, Mark 3, 4, 5? They look more menacing to me. I know they're not as effective as Second World War tanks, obviously. But they just look scarier to me. More apocalypse, nah. Dystopia. I don't know. They just look scarier. Like the treads going all
played
around.
its part in the titanic British victories of the summer and autumn of 1918. It spearheaded British attacks like the one at the Battle of Amiens on August the 8th, which saw British and Allied infantry advance further into German lines than any other battle on the Western Front in World War I. These Mark Vs were faster, more reliable than the Mark IVs. They were also able to be steered by one person, unlike the 4 people required to steer this tank's predecessor. Britain's massive industrial base and innovative culture was producing tanks which every year were becoming better and better by orders of magnitude.
In less than 3 years, tanks had gone from the drawing board to becoming integral to Allied war plans. They were no longer just a novelty, but another part of the machinery of war, one that was critical to the final Allied victory.
I love the idea of like that they have one, like the bigger tanks is essentially a battering ram to get through the defenses and barbed wire or whatnot. And then once they go through, they're kind of smaller tanks that, as they said, as Dan said, just kind of like go in and sow chaos. Like I can just picture that so well. Like another Lord of the Rings analogy. This time at Minas Tirith, where the battering ram goes in and then the... I like Lord of the Rings, okay? Really interesting. Love these videos. Love that Dan Snow is the commentator, host, and the sitcom nature kind of cracked me up. Like they all paused and like they, you know. Okay, sorry. Hope you guys are all doing well. I'd appreciate any comments at all, and I'll see you next time. Bye, guys.